Hey guys, Kevin for Vinyl, Season 1, Episode 4, The Racket, and yes, I am still watching the show. I meant to watch this episode on that crazy weekend, on that crazy week when the musical was going on. I meant to watch it, but I just felt tired, I really did. I didn't feel like doing a whole recap, because it takes a very long time, guys. It takes me usually like 2 to 3 hours to actually finish an episode and put up a recap, because you guys know I pretty much put in every single piece of dialogue that the characters say because I feel it's important. Unless there's a scene that I know is not important, then I don't put it in. Like, for example, a lot of the Clark, Alice Cooper scenes in episode 3, I did not put in. But I did finally get a chance to watch this episode. I'm binging the show. I'm going to binge Vinyl, then I'm going to binge American Crime Story, then I'm going to binge Underground. Those are 3 shows I want to catch up on, but I did finally get a chance to watch this episode, and I gotta say, much better episode than episode 3. I was worried about this episode because of episode 3. You guys know, episode 3 was not a bad episode. It just didn't click the way the first 2 episodes did. The first episode being, I think, perfect. Nothing wrong with the first episode at all. And then episode 2 being pretty solid. Not as good as episode 1, but definitely solid. Episode 3 just felt very messy. It felt very messy. It felt like just really weirdly edited, things like that. And episode 4, I'll say, is a lot more back on track. Some of my problems with episode 3 still remain in episode 4, but definitely was a much more focused episode. They were a lot more focused on the plot and a lot less focused on, oh, let's meet this guest star. So let's just get into this episode. I really did enjoy it overall, and I thought it was really great. So we see everyone's attending the funeral of, everyone's attending Buck's funeral pretty much, and there is this detective that comes up to Zach basically and asks him if he's Richie Finestra, and of course Zach says he's not, but he says that he couldn't make it, and for whatever reason Richie is just not there. He skipped out on the funeral. Where he really is with this marriage therapist, which, crazy scene. You know, we see he's with this therapist, which it makes sense. Him and Devon are going through a lot of problems, so now they're with this therapist, and he's having Richie engage by hitting a couch pillow with a tennis racket, which is crazy. And we see as Richie is hitting this pillow, he's imagining that he is, it's when he was bludgeoning Buck. You know, he's imagining bludgeoning Buck, and Devon is very concerned. She does not like what he's doing. She does not think it's going to work at all, and she thinks it's really dumb, actually, that he's just hitting this couch, which I can totally understand why she thinks is really stupid. He's starting to feel better, which she doesn't believe. She doesn't feel that he's feeling better. She thinks that this is just, the guy that's, making him hit the couch, get into his ear and telling him that he's getting better, which he's really not. And Devon really does not want to participate in this. She thinks it's stupid. She thinks it's dumb that he's hitting the couch, and she just doesn't buy it at all. You see that things are really tense between these two. Like, it's really getting bad. And she also knows that he's doing drugs. And she even says that they have an agreement that no one in the family does drugs, and she knows that he's back to doing cocaine because of the crazy shit he's been doing, and he's trying to say, oh, well, no one got hurt this time, which of course we know is not true, but Devon doesn't know that, so he has to keep up this act that nobody got hurt and he didn't do anything wrong, and that he's feeling better. And I love this scene where he says, what do you want me to tell my children? Do you want me to tell my children I'm feeling better? And she says she doesn't want him to do that because she knows deep down he's not feeling better. He is still going through problems, and to her, nothing's really changed. He's still the same that he is, and he's not really, to her at least, not feeling better. And I thought that was a very good scene. I really love that, and really shows how tense this marriage is getting. I mean, it feels very quick, but it makes sense. Things are getting worse and worse, and I like that they did that here. But what I really love about this episode is that while it did focus on Richie, a lot of this episode focuses on how Richie has affected everyone by making these decisions, and that was a big part of this episode. Because especially this one scene on the way back from the funeral, Zach, Scott, Skip, and Julie, they're discussing their immediate future and state of the company. Richie calls the limo's car phone, and they're talking about all, like, how, Richie has really ruined a lot of things. Like, Zach talks about how he doesn't really have money anymore, and that he doesn't really have, shares in the company because of Richie, and they all really are having problems, and, basically, they also talk about that, Zach doesn't think the guy in, like, the brown suit's a detective. He thinks it's just a guy that, like, thought he was Richie and everything. Richie then calls the limo car's phone, apologizes, and tells Zach that funk singer Hannibal is stopping by the offices to discuss re-upping his contract, and Richie asks Zach to delay coming back to the office so that Hannibal doesn't feel outmanned, and he doesn't really talk about why he wasn't there. That's the thing that Zach wants him to talk about. He wants to talk about, why weren't you here? What's going on? What we're all really concerned about you. He even says that he had to tell people that Richie was late, or he even had to tell, someone that he just couldn't make it or whatever. He had to say that. And Richie is saying, it doesn't really matter. I'm just not there. Don't worry about it. And you can tell that he's really upset because, Richie's not getting to what he really wants to talk about, but he does want Zach to delay coming back. Zach and Scott, because Skip will be doing one thing and Julie's going to be working on Robert Goulet's Christmas album. So they're both very busy with that. But I did like the way this was done. You definitely see that Richie and Zach, they're starting to get distance apart, and you definitely do see that here. So, back in American Century, everything is crazy. I mean, American Century, this is probably the craziest we've seen, and I'm pretty sure there were days like this. I mean, think of how crazy the music scene was in the 70s, and think of everything that they're going through. This is probably the craziest day we've seen in American Century, and it's not necessarily all their fault. It's just a lot of things are happening at once, and I definitely really love that. With that said, there are no flashbacks in this episode, which I was very happy about. Not that I'm not liking the flashbacks, but I do think they kind of bring the show down a bit. Like, we'll get this really intense scene, and then, oh, here's Devon back then, and not that I don't care. I think they're good scenes. I don't dislike them by any means, but they're just not doing much for me, and I'm not really enjoying them the way I should be. And I'm sure maybe in a couple episodes they'll do flashbacks again, I'll enjoy them more, but episode 3 just did not work, and, I really wasn't a fan of them. So we see at American Century, all the staff is abuzz about Hannibal's visit. They're all treating him like this huge celebrity because he is, and within seconds, he immediately is just enamored with Cece. He seems to have a crush on her. He seems to really care about her. The problem is that Hannibal has a girlfriend, Starr, who we find is a vegetarian. And I love the scene when Hannibal comes into the hotel room. They've got him all this meat, and he's like, "Oh, sorry, we're vegetarians now." And I thought that was hilarious when they had to get Jamie to get him a brisket. I mean, I feel bad for Jamie. When they had to get Jamie to buy him an apple Danish, I really did feel bad for Jamie. But it was a pretty funny scene. I like seeing that. Richie then shifts his charm level into overdrive as he greets Hannibal's entourage, and he's even telling Hannibal like sign his chest and everything, and he does let Hannibal know that they're not going to be talking deals. They're just going to be having a conversation, which is not really true. They are going to be talking deals, but, he needs to make Hannibal seem like they're just friends and everything, which you can tell these two are definitely close. They've worked together before, so obviously they have, a pass with that, and I like seeing that, and I like Hannibal's a character overall. I thought he was pretty good. I definitely did enjoy what happened with him in this episode. I thought Richie and Hannibal worked well together. I definitely enjoyed that. Clark, though, is in a panic in this episode because he hasn't landed any new acts, and the clock is the 2-week deadline Richie initiated to all his A&R folks. The problem is this doesn't go anywhere. We get one scene with Clark and Marvin, with Clark being upset because we get one scene with Jamie and Clark because Clark is upset that Jamie found the nasty bits, and he hasn't really found anyone, and Marvin talks about how he hasn't found anyone, and him and Marvin in this conversation about Richie and everything, but it didn't really go anywhere for me. That's the thing. Clark is a character that I think is being completely underutilized. They could be doing a lot more with his character, and they're not really using him up to par, in my opinion. They're using him for filler subplots, and I want to see them give him something genuine to do. You could go with this whole idea of, not having a new axe or anything, and they're not really doing that. I wanted to see them do more, and they're not, and, we saw a great scene before of Zach, Julie, Scott, and, Skip talking about how Richie needs these new acts, and he's going to end up firing all of them, and it's their fault, and, Julie even told Scott to possibly find a new act, which Scott really doesn't want to do, which I thought was really interesting, and, so Clark, like I said, I think he's being really underutilized. They're not using him to his full potential, and I think they need to start using him more, because they're not really using him as well as they should be. So we get then this one great scene. The Devon we see in this episode, this is the Devon I want to see in general. Not the Devon with the whole dance company thing. I understand what she wants to do, but it's just not interesting to me. And it's because of scenes like this. This was amazing. Olivia Wilde killed it in this episode. She really is a great actress when you give her great stuff to do. Devon picks up the photo she took of the wrecked apartment, and she focuses on the one of the shattered television, and she didn't know that that was there. She knew there were photos, but there's one of the shattered television. She sees the guitar in it, and you can see, is really enraged. She had no idea it was like that. She had no idea that Richie did that to the television, and, I mean, she knew, but she's obviously very upset, and she's really trying to hold that anger in, which I really love seeing. I think she did a very good job with that. So Richie, meanwhile, he's kind of just catching up with Hannibal. They're talking about his life and how Hannibal has this girlfriend Starr and everything, and how she's a vegetarian and it's hard for him and everything. And you can tell that Hannibal's a bit of a player as well. Like, they bring in 2 girls and right away Hannibal tries to, have sex with them, but basically in order to get an idea of his mood, Richie plays a song by Bobby Womack, who is this, I think, what was it? Bassist, I think, yeah, bassist that Richie really likes, that he wants Hannibal to use on his next album, and he lets Hannibal know they're not really going to talk about, and again, he lets Hannibal know they're not talking about business, they're just talking about changes and things like that, which I really did like seeing, and I like the scenes between Richie and Hannibal. Again, you can tell these are two men that really respect each other, and I like seeing that good stuff. You see that Hannibal talks about his mom's coming to the concert, who Richie's a big fan. Just really good bonding between these two. I enjoyed it. Really good scene. In the office lobby, though, the Nasty Bits and Lester arrive seconds apart. We see the Nasty Bits are there. They're waiting for Richie to sign their record deal. They're both waiting to see where Richie could be, because obviously he promised them he'd get them a record deal, but Richie's very busy, and they both want to see him. And then Lester shows up out of nowhere, and I gotta say, if I had to pick a favorite character in the show, it would without a doubt be Lester Grimes. I know a lot of people would say Jamie Vine, she's a great character. Oh, she's a great character, but I think they're giving the best stuff to Lester. I mean, think about it. Lester has been through shit. He really has. He wanted to be, this friend of Richie and everything, but Richie has kind of betrayed him. He hasn't released what he wanted him to release. It's now too late that he wants to release it again, and now he's going to give Richie a piece of his mind, and I'm happy that Lester did that. I mean, Lester deserved to basically be a complete fuck you to Richie. That's exactly what he's doing here. He's slowing down things. He's making Richie's life hell, and I think Richie honestly deserves it after what happened. But I did like seeing the Nasty Bits in this episode, being delayed. It was honestly pretty funny. You also see that at first you think that Kip is going to go on a date with Jamie and that he's going to ask her out for a drink, but then you realize that they just want the contract. They want to sign the contract so they can get out of there, because things are already crazy and they don't want it to get crazier. So Jamie's trying to run interference and just keep them there, so they're not going crazy, and you can tell it's really not working. She's trying to stall them, but it's not really working. Zach and Scott then stop for breakfast at a diner, and I love this scene with Zach, because we already knew that Zach was Richie's trusted confidant, but we didn't really see the damage that Zach has been through, because we see how Richie's last-minute cancellation of the polygram deal has totally destroyed the financial plans. He wanted to save up money to get his parents a condo, and now he can't do that, which really sucks. And he's also really upset because he doesn't really get much credit for music. He doesn't really get to show. There was this one artist that he really liked that Richie didn't, and because Richie didn't like her, he said that Zach didn't know music, which he does, and Zach talks about how he knows every DJ in the United States, every DJ that's there. He knows their music, he knows what they do, and he's very well-rounded in that sort of area, and Richie doesn't really see it that way. And Richie clearly is just very conceited. He wants to see things his way, and I love Zach's line where he said Richie is in a relationship with himself, which is very true. I mean, Richie always tries to make things go his way. He always tries to make this go the way he wants it, and he doesn't try to do anything different, which you totally see here. I definitely really enjoyed that. And I like seeing Scott as well, kind of disappointed with the way things turned out. Like, we find out, wanted to stay with Polygram, but now that they didn't get the deal, he wasn't able to do that, and basically, you see, they both are going through a lot, and while I don't like Scott as a character, I gotta say, after this episode, I'm really not liking Scott. I know he's supposed to be the funny one, but to me, he just comes across as obnoxious, honestly. I'm not a huge fan of his character. I do really like the way this scene played out. It shows how Richie's affected them, and I definitely really enjoyed that. So Skip hits a snag with a shipment of Donny Osmond records. He needs the deliveries delayed because American Century's in the midst of an audit, and he discovers the request is easier said than done, and, basically, the request has been done, and he doesn't, and it's not done, and basically it's not going to happen, and I didn't really care as much about this, honestly. I didn't care as much about the whole Donny Osmond thing, because here's the thing I don't really because we know that he ships records that they don't like. We know that Richie said in the first episode that all the records that they send back, Skip does, but unfortunately, they're delayed right now because American Century is crazy, and he can't really do anything because of that, and, the request is not going to happen yet. So, unfortunately, Skip has a problem with that. And that's his job. Like, that's what he does, if you remember. Richie said in the first episode. And then we see Lester. He barges into Richie's office seconds before Robert Goulet enters the office lobby. And we see right away Richie doesn't know why Lester's there. He wants to know what he's doing there. And he doesn't get a chance to speak. He is about to speak, but he doesn't. And seconds before Robert Goulet enters the office lobby, but before Lester came in, Cece told Richie that she did get a call from a detective that wants to see him, and you could tell that Richie's a little bit nervous, because if you remember, who was it that said it? Corso said straight out that, oh, this is not going to affect us. Don't worry about it. Everything's going to be fine. And now it seems like things aren't turning out well. We know that there are two detectives that have discovered Buck's body, and obviously Richie's kind of worried because of that. But he doesn't know that, he knows that obviously Buck's body's been discovered, and obviously he's kind of worried now. But we see that Robert Goulet, he wants to record a new Christmas song, talking about the day after Christmas, and Julie thinks that this song sounds like shit. He really is not a fan of this song, and he's upset because he wants to include an original song that he wrote, and Richie just says, you know what, just let him do it, even though, most times I think Richie would say no. Things are so crazy, he just says to let him do it. Zach also walks into the office to speak with Richie, and Richie doesn't say anything because, again, there are just too many people in the office. He doesn't get to say anything then, but he does plead with Zach to give him 5 minutes so he can talk to Lester, and Zach silently agrees, and you gotta feel bad for Zach. He really seems like the one that's outnumbered, like the one that isn't really getting a chance to talk to Richie, the one that's not getting a chance to really speak out, and I think that's very interesting the way they're handling that. So we see Lester, and this is finally the scene where Lester gets to blow up at Richie. And he did in last week's episode, but that was more of Richie pleading with Lester to try to come back and try to give him this offer, and he didn't do that. And here we really get to see why Lester's very upset. He says that Richie gave him the over recordings before they brought back painful memories of his lost gift. If you remember the last episode, he couldn't sing anymore, and Richie assures Lester that his actions weren't meant to be hurtful, and Lester doesn't care. He doesn't care what Richie wants. He does not want to record this, and he wants to reassure Richie that they're never going to be released. He literally takes a lighter, sets the record on fire, drops it in the wastebasket alongside Richie's desk, and the flames grow quickly, obviously, and before Cece can bring in water in to douse the fire, the sprinkler system activates, just pours on Richie, and again, I mean, it's crazy in this episode. It's non-stop, and really crazy way that was done, definitely, really crazy, and, especially because it didn't seem like it was stopping. Really crazy stuff, and definitely you can tell how crazy American Century is. Devon then meets a divorce lawyer who definitely you can tell she's totally taken aback by the way the lawyer is and everything, so that was very interesting. And then we see again, Jamie's trying to keep the nasty bits calm. They're not staying calm. Obviously, they really want to get the record deal signed. It seems like they're the only ones that aren't getting to go in, and they're getting restless, obviously. They really want to sign this record deal, and you can tell why this isn't, this is really annoying them. But then I love what Lester does, because what Lester does here is a complete he doesn't care what Richie thinks, and he's going to do this just to mess with Richie. Lester storms out of the building, notices the nasty bit sitting on the curb smoking. He momentarily locks eyes with Kip, stops in his track, and doubles back. And in a nearby bar, Lester gives the band a crash course on the realities of the record business, informing them of the pitfalls they need to watch out for, and that this isn't going to last forever. He tells them this isn't going to last forever. You need to understand that. You need to understand that not everyone's going to like you. It's a very interesting scene. I like the way that was done. And you see Lester kind of being like a mentor to the nasty bits. Even though Richie kind of was, Lester kind of wants to be, and I like seeing that, and it gives Lester more of a purpose. And like I said, I definitely think Lester is quickly becoming my favorite character. I'm really loving what they're doing with him. The nasty bits then return to the office. Richie finally has a moment to talk with them. Kip momentarily delays the start of the meeting as their new manager stopped at the bathroom, and moments later, Lester appears at Richie's office doorway, and Richie is pissed that Lester is basically now the manager of nasty bits, because Kip says they have a manager, and Richie and Lester go at it trying to hash out a deal. Richie's furious that Lester trashed his office and has the nerve to turn to the nasty bits manager asking for a hefty advice for them, and an amount Richie would have never dreamed of offering to new talent. And we see that Lester had some really good points too, that he reminded of what's going on and that he's really upset about what happened. I mean, you really see these two, it's really boiling between them. You understand why things aren't good between these two, and I definitely like seeing that. Like I've said, we haven't really seen flashbacks of what went wrong exactly. We just know that Richie never really got to release what Lester really wanted him to release. He never got to release those recordings. As a result, Lester had to sing music he didn't really want to sing, and now it's just too late. Richie wants to release those recordings, and now it's too late for Lester, who can't sing anymore, and to him it would just be irrelevant for him to do that, and I like the way this was done. Really great stuff between Richie and Lester in this episode, and I really love the way the blood is boiling. And it's only going to get worse. I don't think it's going to get better. I think it's only going to get worse at this point. So Richie basically heads to Hannibal's office to Hannibal's concert to pay a visit and he's about to head to Hannibal's concert, basically. But then we see what's her name? The receptionist comes in. I can't remember her name. Heather. Heather comes in, who is basically Cece, but Cece's not there because she's at the concert. And she tells him that there are 2 detectives there to see him. And the way that Richie was still working so late at night, I mean, you could really tell how crazy a day at the office it was. And one of these texts was a huge Robert Goulet fan, and I like the way this was done. I mean, they treat Richard like a celebrity; they don't treat him like a regular person. But then we see that they're not really good at their job. I mean, their interrogation methods aren't very good. But they finally get to the point. The texts were hoping to speak with Richie at the funeral because they have reason to believe he was at Buck Rogers' home on the night he went missing. And just the way the scene was done, I absolutely love. Because one, Robert Goulet's Christmas song starts, you can just see Richie, just the look in his eyes. This is complete, he is terrified and he does not know what to do because he did not think this would come up. He thought, from what Corso said, that he wouldn't have to deal with this, and now he does. I mean, this is his worst nightmare without a doubt, and you definitely see that here. So, really crazy the way this was done. I'm not surprised that it happened, obviously, because like I said, Corso said it would happen, but now it's even worse for Richie, and his situation is so much worse now, and who knows where this is going. I mean, they could find out very quickly what's going on here, and you can already tell that they're already suspicious of Richie, which, we know, of course, he was one to kill Buck Rogers, but Corso was as well, and I don't know if they're seeking out Corso, but definitely this is only going to get worse. So then we see Zach is cringing at the lyrics of Robert Goulet's original songs he records. I didn't think it was terrible. I mean, the lyrics, yeah, are pretty bad, definitely. They don't really work for a song, but I thought it was a good, lighthearted Christmas song. There are a lot of Christmas songs that are very cheesy, and this is a very good example of that. And I thought the guy that played Robert Goulet, I really believed he was Robert Goulet. I think he did a good job with that. I enjoyed that. And it also is a good idea. It's a good thing to show, like, where everyone's been, definitely. Like, you see Jamie and Kip, like, they're going to the concert and everything, and they're going through some problems. Richie's trying to leave the office, and we also see this great scene with Hannibal, where Hannibal basically sees, Jackie Jervis, if you remember Jervis, Richie's rival. Jervis is trying to get Hannibal back to his company, while Hannibal is not wanting to go there. He doesn't feel that Jervis wants, that Jervis is really going to recognize him, because Richie even said straight out, Jervis is not going to do anything for you. He's not going to recognize you, you're not going to be remembered, and you have no business going back to Jervis, that you want to stay with us, because we will recognize you, and, Capitol Records has so many other, you know, um, funk artists that they're not going to remember Hannibal, and that's, I thought, was very interesting. I like the way this was done, and you also tell that he's starting to take a bit of a liking to Cece, which is going to be a problem, because like I said, he has a girlfriend. He's supposed to be with his girlfriend Starr, and it doesn't seem like he's recognizing her more that much, which is interesting, and I like the way that that's going. So, really good scene. We'll have to see where that goes, but it does show again that a lot of characters in the show aren't very likable. Even Hannibal, he's doing some terrible things, and I understand he's supposed to be an anti-hero, but it is very hard to like some of these characters at points. Richie then calls Devon, though, to tell her that he's going to stay in the city to make sure everything's squared away with Hannibal. She tries to tell him that she wants to see a divorce lawyer, but he literally just cuts her off. Like, he doesn't let her say what she wants to say, and he's not really facing the reality of the situation, and I'm not surprised that he just cut her off like that. I mean, Richie clearly thinks that things are okay between them. He doesn't know that she's going to see a divorce lawyer. He doesn't know the way that she feels, because he hasn't really asked her out how she feels, and that's one of the reasons why these two aren't really working really well anymore, and that's why I think the relationship is kind of going down the toilet, you can see. So, I love this next scene with Devon here. This was an incredible scene. I love the way this was done. Devon is continuing to study the photos she took of Richie's guitar sticking out of the shattered TV screen. She goes to a kitchen to wash the skill in the sink, scrubbing it just furiously, and as she scrubs, you can just tell this is exactly just all of her anger and rage towards Richie. She can no longer hold him. She literally slams the skillet against the kitchen window until it shatters, and she just can't do it. She needs to let it out, and I like that she let it out. She's been holding in this rage inside of her. She finally lets it out, and I love seeing that. Really amazing scene for Devon. You can tell that she is really pissed. Like, she's really pissed at Richie. She has a reason to be pissed, and I like seeing that. Really great stuff there. Richie then heads to a small jazz bar who focuses on the trumpet player of the band, and as the set ends, the musician sits the bar next to Richie and has a drink, and the man is Richie's father, Sal, who figures that Richie must need something. You can tell that Richie didn't really want to be involved, but Richie says that he needs an alibi on the night of Buck's death, which is interesting. He needs someone to kind of defend him, and that Sal might be the right person to do that, and that's how the episode ends. So overall, guys, I enjoyed this episode a lot more than the last one. Like I said, I did think some of the stuff, like with Kip, they didn't really go anywhere with him. We had this one scene with him and Marvin, but they didn't really do anything with it. I wanted to see more of that because we didn't really get to see it, and I kind of wanted the office day to be a bit more crazy. After that whole thing with the sprinklers, it wasn't as crazy, and I wanted to see it be crazier and crazier, because I think that's pretty much how a typical day at the office in the 1970s on a day like this was. was. I mean, it really seemed crazy and it seemed very realistic the way they portrayed it here. But I really, like I said, really did enjoy this episode. There's a lot of things I really enjoyed here. First of all, what is Richie gonna do about this whole Buck case? I mean, he's being investigated now. This has to be terrifying. Who knows how he's gonna get out of this? I don't really know how he's gonna get out of this, because right now it seems like his worst nightmare is coming true, and everything that Corso said to him is not true. I mean, they're clearly coming after him. They're clearly suspicious of what he's doing, and Corso has no idea what he's talking about, clearly, because Corso said, oh, it's not going to affect us, don't worry about it. And I'm pretty sure that Corso's been through this kind of thing before, and I think he was just trying to make Richie feel safe, which clearly is not working. So I can totally understand why Richie's terrified of that, but he's also not facing the realities of what's really happening in his relationship. The reality is his relationship is deteriorating with Devon, and if he doesn't do something, they're going to get a divorce. She already went to this divorce lawyer who clearly isn't good at her job, and very strange, but she did go to a divorce lawyer, and she did try to divorce Richie, and Richie has no idea that she's doing any of that because he's so focused on Hannibal. Let's talk about Hannibal. Is Hannibal going to end up cheating on Starr with Cece? I hope he doesn't. I hope Cece has the willpower not to do that. It doesn't seem like Cece likes him the way that he does, which is interesting. I'm interested in seeing how that's going to be, because that's very interesting. What is Richie going to use his father for? Because he really wants to use his father as an alibi. We'll have to see what happens with that, because that's going to be very interesting. I can't wait to see where that goes, definitely. Richie and Lester. Lester is now the manager of the Nasty Bits, and things are only going to get worse between these two. I mean, I really do see Lester's point that Richie didn't get him what he wanted. Why should he believe that Richie's going to help him now? He's not going to, and I like seeing that between Lester. You can really see that Richie really broke him, and you can see why he's really upset with Richie. I like seeing that. Really great stuff between Richie and Lester in this episode. Definitely really enjoyed that. And then as far as the Nasty Bits go, I like the way they're handling that whole thing. I think that's very interesting. And the way that they're not really being recognized by Richie, even though he had a million other acts to deal with. I mean, you can tell that he really does want to focus on them, but he had so much else to deal with that he didn't get to them. And I like seeing as well how outnumbered Zach really is. I mean, Zach has all these ideas, and Richie does not listen to him because they do not pertain to what Richie wants. And it's clear that, you know, what happens with Richie is what he wants is always over what everyone else wants. And that's just how Richie works, which is not right, obviously, but that's what Richie does. And I think it's very interesting. And I like the way they portrayed that in this episode, because it showed how much of, I think, a douchebag Richie really is. And, you know, how he doesn't really listen to anyone else. He's very good at his job, definitely, but he definitely doesn't listen to anyone else's suggestions because he just listens to his own voice. That's just how it is. And you know, when Zach says Richie's in a relation with himself, he really is, and you definitely see that in this episode, and I really enjoyed that. And then the whole conversation with Scott and Julie and Skip, you can see that they're going through hell as well. I mean, Skip not working out with Donny Osmond, definitely we're going to have to see what happens there, because obviously he needs to get rid of these records and it's not working. So is that going to work out? And then Clark, like I said, they didn't do too much with Clark in this episode besides that one scene with him and Marvin. Is Clark going to be able to work there? I mean, I really think that Clark's going to end up getting fired because he hasn't found a new act. I remember Richie said, you don't find a new act in 2 weeks, then I'm going to fire you. And Richie didn't outright fire anyone in this episode, but I do think that pretty soon that conversation is going to come up. He's going to blow up, and it really seems like this episode is kind of the calm before the storm. Even though things were crazy, it really did seem that way. Notice you guys saw this episode. I definitely really love this episode. Definitely one of the better ones that we've had so far. Like I said, a lot better than episode 3. Notice you guys saw it, and we'll see you guys in the next one, which will be for episode 5 of Vinyl, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.